I paved a 10-li red dowry for Guyan, helping him rise step by step from a mere commoner of humble origins to the position of the youngest marquis in the Jing dynasty. The day the imperial edict was issued, the entire residence was decorated with lanterns and streamers, and everyone said that I, Shen Wanyi, had finally seen the end of my bitter days, and was about to become the most glorious titled lady in the capital. And Gu Yan did indeed give me a huge surprise. He didn't first enter the palace to express his gratitude, but instead galloped back to his hometown 300 li away to bring back his frail, sickly, and helpless childhood sweetheart, Lin Qingqing. Just the moment before I was to receive the imperial edict, he took that woman's hand, walked through the crowds of guests, came before me, and in front of a hall full of powerful and noble figures, announced word by word, Wanyi Qingqing has no father or mother. She is an orphan, all alone and pitiful, and has suffered too much over the years. What I owe her, I can never repay in this lifetime. From this day on, she will be the equal wife of the Marquis Pingyuan's manor, with the same honor and status as you. I laughed. I turned my head. Right there in front of that bright yellow imperial edict, I pulled out the pre-prepared divorce letter from my sleeve and slapped it on the desk in front of him. Marquis, congratulations. This noble title, whoever wants it can have it. From now on, our weddings and funerals will have nothing to do with each other. Shen Wanyi, are you crazy? Guyan's face instantly turned ashen. That handsome face I had admired for 7 years was now filled with disbelief and a faint anger at being publicly defied. Do you know what day it is today? What are you throwing a fit about? Lin Qingqing beside him, all the more opportunely turned pale, weakly tugged at his sleeve. Her eyes filled with tears, as if she had suffered a terrible injustice. Sister Wanyi, don't blame Brother Yan. It is all my fault. I shouldn't have come. I shouldn't have extravagant desires any status. I'll leave right now. As she spoke, she made to leave, but Guyan grabbed her wrist and held her tightly behind him. Why are you leaving? You're not allowed to go anywhere. Juyan glared at me, his voice full of disappointment. Wanyi, I thought you were the most magnanimous, the one who understood me best. I brought Qingqing back just to give her a place to stay, to make up for my years of debt to her. You can't even tolerate her this much. I watched his deeply affectionate performance and just felt a wave of nausea. Make up for your debt. I let out a light laugh, and my gaze swept across the wonderfully varied expressions of all the guests. Gu Yan, you used my Shen family's money and my Shen family's power to pave your road to success. And in the end, it is to give you and your childhood sweetheart a place to stay, and even to share the same status as me. Your calculations are so good. My mathematics tutor in Zhangyan would have to praise you as a genius. Juyan's face turned the color of pig liver. What nonsense are you spouting? The reason I am where I am today is because of my own 10 years of hard study, because of my talent and hard work. What does it have to do with your Shen family? The way he was so eager to distance himself was truly laughable and pathetic. Is that so? I couldn't be bothered to argue with him, and just push the divorce agreement further towards him. Since the Marquis is a man of such integrity, I'm sure you wouldn't deign to take advantage of a merchant's daughter like me. On this divorce agreement, the division of assets is written out crystal clear. When I married you, my dowry spanned 10 li totaling 128 palanquins, plus 10,000 taels of gold, 36 prosperous shops in Zhongyan, and 1,000 mu of fertile land. These are all my premarital assets and should rightfully be returned to me. For the 7 years after our marriage, your official socializing, your networking, which expense didn't come out of my dowry, the few businesses you've invested in, who gave you the principal, even this official robe you're wearing now. The fabric is cloud brocade that I had someone ship from Suzhou and Hangzhou. Let's not go over these things in detail. I just want my dowry back. As for this marquise's manor, I glanced at this magnificent mansion. Oh, this mansion was a gift from His Majesty. You can keep it. Half of the furnishings and antiques inside were added by me. I've already had someone draw up a list. Tomorrow, I will send people to retrieve them. Gu Yan, I'll leave with nothing to make it happen for you and your Lin Mei Mei. From now on, you walk your sunny, broad road and I'll cross my single plank bridge. How about it? My voice wasn't loud, but every word was clear, like daggers quenched in ice, stabbing ruthlessly into Gu Yan's heart. He was completely stunned. His hand holding Lin Qingqing's unconsciously loosened, and he stared deadly at me, as if it was the first time he'd ever met me. Shen Wanyai, are you really going to be this ruthless? Before I could answer, Lin Qingqing's craving for drama acted up again. She fell to her knees before me with a plop, crying pitifully, her face streaked with tears. Big sister, I'm begging you, please don't leave Brother Yan. You are in his heart. He just feels indebted to me. If you can't stand the sight of me, I'll be a concubine. No, I'll be your workhorse and serve you and the marquis. I only beg you not to leave. The way she said it, it was as if I was the vicious woman tearing them, a pair of ill-fated lovers apart. The surrounding guests began to whisper amongst themselves, and the way they looked at me became complicated. Gu Yan was clearly moved by her righteous and understanding performance. He bent down to help her up, his tone gentler than ever before. Qingqing, what are you doing? Get up, I told you. I won't let you be wronged. After he finished speaking, he turned to me again, his gaze as cold and hard as iron. Shen Wanye. Look, Qingqing is so sensible. Why do you have to be so aggressive? Why do you have to make everyone look bad? I'll say this one last time. Take back the divorce papers. I'll just pretend today's incident never happened. From now on, you're the main wife. She is the co-wife. You will address each other as sisters and live together in harmony. My patience is limited. Address each other as sisters. I almost laughed out loud. I couldn't be bothered to look at their nauseating faces anymore, so I gave a slight curtsy to the eunuch standing aside, who was holding the imperial edict but had been hesitating to announce it. Sorry to have made you, Gong Gong, come all this way for nothing. This title of nobility for the Pingyuan Marquise's mansion. I, Shen Wanyai, am not fortunate enough to receive. Please, Gong Gong. Seeing that the internal strife in the Marquise's mansion was now a foregone conclusion, he put away the imperial edict, gave Gu Yan a meaningful look, and sighed. Since it has come to this, I'll report back truthfully, Marquise. You're on your own. After saying that, he led his entourage and left in a grand procession. A tremendous honor had, in an instant, turned into a tremendous joke. Gu Yan's face could no longer be described as just ugly. It was the gloom of an impending storm. Shen Wanyai, you dare defy an imperial edict. I did not defy the edict. I looked at him calmly. I merely divorced my husband. Since I am no longer your wife, I am naturally not fit to receive that imperial edict. After saying that, I paid him no more mind and turned to leave. My personal headmaids, Chun Tao and Shaju, along with a few loyal servants, had already packed up my personal belongings and were waiting for me at the second gate. Stop her! Gu Yan finally reacted, roaring with anger. Several of the mansion's guards immediately surrounded me, blocking my path. I stopped in my tracks, turned back and looked at him coldly. Gu Yan, are you sure you want to make a move? You better think this through. If I can't walk out this door today, what kind of rumors do you think will spread in the capital tomorrow? Will the rumor be that you, the Marquis of Pingyuan, put your official wife under house arrest for a childhood sweetheart from the countryside? Or that you're kicking away the ladder, trying to force me, your wife from your humble days, to death, now that you've got your title? Gu Yan was rendered speechless by my questions, his expression shifting repeatedly. He knew that everything I said was true. Although my Shen family are merchants, our network in the capital is intricate, and the power of public opinion is enough to overwhelm him with problems. He thought I was just throwing a tantrum and would give in soon enough. He was used to my sacrifices and obedience, and never imagined I would actually leave. Wanye. He softened his tone, trying to play the sentiment card. It has been 7 years. We've been husband and wife for 7 years. Can't that outweigh this fit of yours? You go back to the courtyard and calm down first. We'll talk again tonight. No need, I cut him off. There is nothing to talk about, Gu Yan. We're over. After saying that, I didn't look at him again and walked straight towards the main gate. Those few guards looked at me, then at Guyan, unsure of what to do. Just then, a clear voice, tinged with a hint of playful irreverence, came from outside the gate. "Yo, what is this scene all about?" The newly appointed Marquis of Pingyuan, blocking his own titled lady at home. I looked up and saw a young master dressed in splendid brocade clothes, fanning himself, lazily leaning against the doorframe. It was my biological elder brother, the young master of the Shen family, Shen Shu. Seeing Shen Shu, Guyan's pupils contracted sharply. He and my brother have never gotten along. Shen Shu looked down on his Phoenix Man ways, and he also felt that Shen Shu reeked of money and was unbearably vulgar. "Brother-in-law?" Guyan forced a stiff smile, but his tone was not very polite. "This is my family's business, so I won't trouble you with it." "Family business?" Shen Shu closed his fan and walked in step by step, followed by 8 strong and powerful Shen family guards. As soon as they entered, they forced back the few guards of the Marquise's manor. Shen Shu walked to my side, looked me up and down, and only breathed a sigh of relief after seeing I was safe and sound. Then, he turned to look at Guyan, his eyes as cold as ice. "Guyan, you can bring your childhood sweetheart back to the manor and give her the position of an equal wife. My sister can't control that, and my Shen family can't be bothered to. But if you dare to lay a single finger on my sister, forget about a minor marquis like you. Even if the Jade Emperor himself came, I'd make him understand that the people of my Shen family are not to be trifled with." These words were spoken with extreme arrogance, but also with great confidence. Guyan's expression completely fell. "Shen Shu, don't be too arrogant. This is the Marquise's manor, not your Shen family's shop. So, what if it is a Marquise's mansion?" Shen Shu sneered. "Just an empty shell propped up by my sister's dowry. Without her, your Marquise's mansion probably can't even pay the servants' monthly wages. Can it? You." Yu Yan trembled with anger, but couldn't refute a single word, because what Shen Shu said was the truth. I tugged on Shen Shu's sleeve, signaling for him to stop talking. "Brother, let's go." "Okay." Shen Shu immediately put on a smiling face, supporting my arm. "Let's go, brother, we'll take you home. Mom and Dad miss you." I nodded and turned to leave with him. Guyan stood rooted to the spot, watching my departing figure, his expression extremely complicated. There was anger, resentment, shock, and a trace of panic that even he himself hadn't noticed. He probably still thought I was just going back to my parents' home to stay for a bit, and would come back once my anger subsided. He even shouted at my back, "Shen Wanyi, I'll give you 3 days. If you're not back in 3 days, then never come back." I didn't look back 3 days. "Guyan, you underestimate me too much, and you overestimate yourself too much." The moment I walked out of the Marquise's mansion gates, even the wind in the capital city seemed to have become freer. Once on the carriage back to the Shen mansion, Shen Shu finally dropped his foppish playboy look and looked at me with concern. "Wanyi, have you really thought this through? Are you really letting that ungrateful bastard off this easily?" I leaned back on the soft cushion, closed my eyes, and let out a long sigh. "Bro, it has been 7 years, and I see it clearly now. He doesn't love me. He loves the future my family background could bring him. Now that he is successful and famous, he thinks his wings have hardened and he can trample me, this daughter of a merchant, under his feet. But he miscalculated one thing." I opened my eyes, a clear light within them. I, Shen Wanyi, can pick things up, and I can also let them go. Since he has been unkind, he can't blame me for being unjust. Shen Shu let out a heavy snort. He got off easy. If I'd known he was such a heartless bastard, I never should have let you marry him in the first place. And Dad too. What kind of bewitching soup did you feed him, for him to actually agree to this marriage? I smiled a little, and didn't explain. Some things, it wasn't the time to talk about them yet. Back at the Shen residence, father and mother were already waiting at the entrance. Seeing me, my mother's eyes immediately reddened. She took my hand, her heart aching so much that tears kept falling. "My child, you've been wronged." My father, Shen Kongji, the grand tutor of the current dynasty, looked at me with a grave expression, which in the end only turned into a long sigh. It is good that you're back. It is good that you're back. A warmth spread through my heart. Forcing back my tears, I smiled and said, Dad, Mom, I'm fine. It is just leaving someone who is not worthy to start a new life. It is a good thing. Our family returned to the inner hall. I told the whole story of the divorce letter from beginning to end. After Shenshu heard, he slammed the table in anger. This is outrageous. He looked at me, his gaze profound. Wanye, you already have a plan in your heart, don't you? I met my father's gaze and nodded solemnly. Yes, Dad. Not only am I getting a divorce, I also want to remarry. Remarry. Shenshu and Mother were both stunned. Wanyi, you just jumped out of a pit of fire. How can you want to again? Mother had a worried look on her face. Shenshu also frowned. Sister, who do you want to marry? There are plenty of talented young men in the capital, but remarrying right after a divorce will be bad for your reputation. How about you wait a couple of years first? Only Father, looking at me thoughtfully, slowly asked, Who do you want to marry? I took a deep breath and said that name. The seventh prince. Shaoqi. The moment these words were spoken, the entire room fell silent. The seventh prince, Shaoqi, the current emperor's seventh son, was once the most dazzling star general in the capital. He went to the battlefield at 15. His military achievements were illustrious, and at 20, he was enfoffed as the highly decorated Prince Genbei. But 2 years ago, in a brutal battle against the Northern D, he was struck by several arrows while saving his commander. Although his life was saved, his legs were crippled, and from then on, he could only spend his days in a wheelchair. The once favored son of heaven became a crippled prince overnight. His temperament changed drastically, and he shut himself away all day, becoming an ignored, marginalized figure in the royal family. You want to marry a cripple? Shenshu was the first to jump up. No, I absolutely disagree. Little sister, why must you suffer like this? Jumping from one fiery pit into another ice cellar? Mother also grew anxious. That is right. Wanyi, the seventh prince. With his body, if you marry him, won't you just be alive and widow? I ignored their agitation and just looked at Father quietly. Father was silent for a long time before he slowly spoke. Do you know why he became crippled? I nodded. I know. 2 years ago, during the great victory at the northern border, the commander of that battle was Gu Yan. The seventh prince was shot in both legs by enemy arrows while saving him. So Gu Yan owes his life to the seventh prince. This is also why Gu Yan was able to leap from an obscure minor official to a marquis in just 2 short years. Because even though the seventh prince is crippled, he still has some sway with his majesty. He strongly vouched for Gu Yan, claiming he had the talent of a great general. But Gu Yan, he took this debt of gratitude and used it as capital for his own meteoric rise. After hearing this, Shenshu had a sudden realization, and then became even more furious. Well, this Gu Yan not only betrayed you, he is also ungrateful. The seventh prince became like this for him. And what does he do? He climbs up by stepping on his savior's shoulders. He is simply not human. So, I looked at my father, my gaze firm. Dad, I want to marry the seventh prince. First, what Gu Yan owes the seventh prince, I will repay. Second, I want to let Gu Yan know that everything he possesses, I can give it to him, and I can also easily take it away. Didn't he rise to power by relying on the seventh prince's favor of recognizing his talent? Then I will become the seventh prince's wife, his princess consort. I'd like to see if he, this marquis, would still dare to be as insolent as before when he sees me. Third, I paused, my voice carrying a hint of tenderness only I could understand. I believe that he, the seventh prince, is a man worth entrusting my life to. My father looked at me, a flash of approval in his eyes, and also a trace of heartache. He was silent for a long time, and finally nodded. All right. Since you've made up your mind, I, as your father, will arrange it for you. However, this matter requires an imperial edict for marriage from His Majesty to be legitimate and proper. I'll have to trouble you, father. I stood up and gave my father a deep bow. I knew that as long as my father took action, this matter would be settled. My father, Shen Kongji, is on the surface a grand tutor who has been retired for many years, uninvolved in court affairs. But in reality, he is the current emperor's most trusted imperial tutor, the emperor's secret advisor. This is the true backing of my Shen family. It is also something that Gu Yan, that self-righteous phoenix man, could never imagine. He thought I was just the daughter of a somewhat wealthy merchant, but he didn't know that I am the daughter of the imperial tutor, the daughter of the grand tutor. When I married down to him back then, hiding my identity, it was only because I was taken with his talent, wanting to live a pure life with him, one undisturbed by power and influence. It was me. I was too naive. The next 3 days were incredibly pleasant for me. I took off that dull, dark brocade attire of the marchioness, changed into a bright, long dress I would only wear as a young girl, and with my maids in tow roamed every street and alley of the capital, listening to some music, sipping some tea, buying some little trinkets I liked. In the capital, gossip about the marquis.Decree's manor was already spreading like wildfire. There was a ridiculous number of versions. Some said that the newly appointed marquis.Decree was a passionate man, who, in order not to betray his childhood sweetheart from the countryside, would go as far as to defy the emperor's will just to give her a proper title. Some said that the marchioness, Lady Shen, was jealous and couldn't tolerate a weak woman, even throwing a tantrum at the title, conferring ceremony and insisting on a divorce. But most people sympathized with me. That Lady Shen is truly pitiful. She endured 7 years of hardship with her husband, and just when she finally made it, her husband brings back a younger one. Isn't that the truth? I heard that this Ava Corporation lady demanded the title of co-wife as soon as she arrived. Isn't that a blatant slap in the face to Lady Shen? If you ask me, Lady Shen did the right thing. A thankless man like that isn't worth keeping. Sitting in a private room at the tea house, I listened to these discussions and found them rather amusing. Meanwhile, on the other side, the marquis.Decree's manor was already a chaotic mess. When I left, I took with me all the stewards and servant women loyal to me. These people were all brought by me from the Shen family, and they managed all the key departments of the marquis's mansion, such as household finances, procurement, and personnel. Lin Qingqing wanted to be the mistress in charge of the household, but found that she couldn't command anyone at all. The remaining servants were all personally promoted by Gu Yan. They feigned compliance, bullied her for not understanding household affairs, and it was always either this missing or that in short supply. In just 3 days, the expenses of the marquis's mansion were already over budget, and the accounts were a total mess. Gu Yan got back from court, not to a warm and gentle home, but to a heap of trivial troubles. Lin Qingqing cried and whined as she complained to him, saying the servants bullied her, and that everyone in the mansion was still on my side. At first, Gu Yan patiently comforted her, but later he got so annoyed by her antics that he couldn't help but yell at her a few times. He started to miss the days when I was around, missing that Shen Wanyi who could always keep the house in perfect order, allowing him to strive outside without any worries about what is at home. He was convinced that I was just throwing a little tantrum, and that in a few days after the Shen family talked me around, I would naturally come back. After all, I loved him so much. After all, he is a marquis now, and I'm a titled lady. This is an honor that countless women dream of. How could I possibly really give it up? At dusk on the 3rd day, Gu Yan thought, my anger should have subsided by now. He changed his clothes, prepared a portion of my favorite osmanthus cake, and got ready to personally go to the Shen families to pick me up and bring me back. He felt that, by being willing to lower himself and come pick me up in person, he had already given me tremendous face. However, before he could even step out of the marquis's mansion's main gate, the imperial edict from the palace arrived. This time, it wasn't sent to His Marquis.Decree's mansion. Instead, in a grand procession with gongs and drums, it was sent to Grand Tutor Shen's mansion. The eunuch announcing the edict was the chief imperial eunuch, Eunuch Li. This spectacle was much grander than when he was enfoffed as a marquis. Guyan froze on the spot, an ominous premonition rising in his heart. He followed the crowd and, as if possessed, also surged toward the gates of the Shen mansion. Then, he heard Eunuch Li's sharp and clear voice, echoing throughout the entire long street. By the grace of heaven, the emperor proclaims, it has come to our attention that the daughter of Grand Tutor Shen Kongji, Lady Shen Wanye, is accomplished and poised, gentle and kind, with outstanding character and appearance. We hereby betroth you to the 7th Imperial Prince, Xiao Che, as his principal consort. The wedding shall take place on an auspicious day. Respect this. Boom. Guyan only felt something explode in his mind. The Grand Tutor Shen's daughter, Shen Wanye, is the daughter of the Imperial Tutor Shen Kongji? How is that possible? She is clearly just the daughter of a Zhongyan merchant. Her father, isn't he called Shen Wansen? He stood blankly in the crowd, watching as in front of the Shen Manor's main gate. My father, Shen Kongji, led the whole family to respectfully accept the imperial edict for the bestowed marriage. And I was standing behind my father, wearing a simple and elegant dress, my expression calm, neither sad nor happy. At that moment, Guyan finally understood. What merchant's daughter, what Shen Wansen, it was all fake. For 7 years, I had been lying to him. No, it wasn't lying to him. It was I and my family. For the sake of my love and to spare his pitiful pride, who staged a drama that lasted for 7 years. He remembered how, back when he was just a poor scholar, he ran into me while I was traveling in Zhongnan. He fell in love with me at first sight, and I admired his talent as well. He said he came from a poor background and was afraid he couldn't give me happiness. I said, my family was just modestly wealthy, that I didn't seek great riches, only one person's heart. He said he wanted to pass the imperial exams and make a name for himself. I said I would use my dowry to help you secure a worry-free future. He thought that my Shen family's so-called merchant wealth could, at best, only make his career in the officialdom a bit smoother. He had never imagined that my Shen family's background was so overwhelmingly powerful. The daughter of the imperial tutor. Those 4 words, like 4 great mountains, weighed heavily on Guyan's heart. He instantly understood how everything fit together. Why could a student like him, with no background whatsoever, repeatedly win the favor of the chief examiners? Why, after he became an official, were there always influential patrons helping him, turning peril into safety? Why, 2 years ago, among so many commanders, did the 7th Prince single him out for special favor, promoting him all the way up from a lowly assistant commander. So, that wasn't any debt of gratitude for his patronage at all. That is because the 7th Prince, Xiao Che, was a student of my father, Shen Kongji. He was the best friend of my older brother Shen Shu. Everything he was so proud of, everything he thought he had earned through his own efforts, was nothing but a smooth, wide road paved for him by my Shen family from behind the scenes. And he, this stupid fool, at the end of this very road, personally pushed away the one who had paved it for him. And for a so-called childhood sweetheart, he even viciously trampled her underfoot. PFFT, a mouthful of fresh blood spewed from Guyan's mouth. His vision went black, and he fell straight down. The surrounding crowd let out a cry of alarm. I stood on the steps, coldly watching the figure that had fallen into the dust, my eyes without a ripple of emotion. Guyan, this is just the beginning. What you owe me, what you owe the 7th Prince, I will make you, bit by bit, repay it with interest. Guyan fell ill. Overcome with rage and his qi and blood in turmoil, he fainted dead away at the Shen residence's entrance. After being carried back to the marquis's manor by the servants, he had a persistent high fever and remained unconscious. The marquis's manor was in complete chaos. Lin Qingqing kept watch by his bed, crying her heart out, cursing me for being heartless as she sobbed. But as a weak woman, she didn't know medicine, nor could she summon an imperial physician. All the slightly famous doctors in the capital, upon hearing it was to treat the Marquis of Pingyuan, all found excuses to decline. Anyone could see that Marquis Pingyuan had lost the emperor's favor, and also offended the future 7th princess consort. Who would still dare to court this disaster? Gu Yan lay in bed for 3 days and 3 nights. And finally, thanks to his youth and good constitution, he woke up on his own. After waking up, he was a whole size thinner, his eyes hollow as if his soul had been sucked out. The first thing he did was to manically drive Lin Qingqing out of his bedroom. "Get out, all of you! Get out!" He smashed everything in the room that could be smashed porcelain, antiques leaving them shattered all over the floor. Among them were quite a few that I had personally sought out for him back then. Lin Qingqing was so scared her face turned pale, and she scrambled out of the room. After venting, Gu Yan sat lifelessly alone amidst the wreckage. From dawn until dusk, he finally had to face a fact. He was finished. Without the support of me and the Shen family, he, this Marquis Pingyuan, was nothing more than an empty shell. All his power, connections, and wealth were built on the foundation I had given him. Now, this tall tower of his could collapse at any moment. He struggled to get up from the floor, stumbled out of the Marquise's manor, and without even time to change, rushed towards the Shen manor in his crumpled sleepwear. "Wanyai, Wanyai, come out and see me!" he shouted like a madman in front of the Shen manor's gate. "I know I was wrong. Wanyai, I really know I was wrong. I'll send Lin Qingqing away. I'll send her far, far away, and never see her again. Will you come back, please? Come back to my side. Our 7 years of marriage. Was it all fake? Give me one more chance!" He cried and shouted himself hoarse, attracting countless passers-by to watch, but the main gate of the Shen residence remained tightly shut. Shen Shu stood on the gatehouse, coldly watching the disgraceful man below, a mocking sneer curling on his lips. "Realize you're wrong now, too late," he ordered the guards beside him. "Beat him for me. Beat him to death. Just say he offended the future 7th princess consort's maternal family. A crime punishable by 10,000 deaths." Yes. The guards accepted the order, opened the main gate, and rushed out like wolves and tigers. Poor Gu Yan, having just recovered from a serious illness, was already weak. How could he be a match for these strong and sturdy guards? For a moment, fists and feet rained down, and wails of agony filled the air. The once infinitely glorious Marquis of Pingyuan was now like a dead dog, beaten to the point of rolling on the ground, completely unable to fight back. The onlookers pointed their fingers, sighing endlessly. Serves him right. If he knew this would happen today, why did he even do it in the first place? Exactly, rejecting the perfectly fine daughter of the imperial tutor, and insisting on messing with some wild chicken from the countryside. Isn't he just bringing this on himself? I heard the 7th prince's legs were crippled saving him. And what does he do? He turns around and forgets his savior. It'd be no pity if a person like that was beaten to death. Amidst endless pain and humiliation, Gu Yan listened to these heart-stabbing words as his consciousness gradually faded. The last thing he saw was a window on the 2nd floor of the Shen mansion being pushed open. I stood behind the window, looking down at him, my gaze colder than winter ice. I was indeed watching him from behind the window, but in my heart, there wasn't a trace of satisfaction, only endless sorrow. I had given 7 years of my youth and devotion to this man. I once thought he was my true love, my final destination, but in the end, I discovered it was all just my wishful thinking. His love was laughably cheap. His ambition had long since devoured his conscience. Watching him being beaten to an inch of his life by the guards, I slowly closed the window. From now on, this man and I would have nothing more to do with each other. My future lies in the 7th prince's mansion. The next day, under my father's arrangement, I met with the 7th prince, Xiao Che. The meeting place was not at the prince's mansion, nor at the Shen family home, but at a private courtyard in the capital's suburbs. The environment was quiet and secluded, not one to attract attention. When I arrived, he was already there. He was sitting in a rosewood wheelchair, his back to me, looking at a pond of withered lotuses in the courtyard. It was late autumn. The lotus flowers had long since withered, leaving only yellowed stems and leaves rustling desolately in the wind. His back looked a bit desolate, and also a bit lonely. Hearing my footsteps, he didn't turn around, just spoke faintly, his voice cold and clear, with a hint of hoarseness from long illness. "Miss Shen, you're here." Greetings. This was the first time I had seen him this up close. He was younger than I had imagined, with deep-set eyes and brows, and a high-bridged nose. Although his face was a bit pale from his long illness, it still couldn't hide that refined and heroic air of a royal scion. But those eyes, once sharp as a hawk's, were now dim and lightless, like a pool of stagnant water, bottomlessly deep. "The imperial edict for the marriage. You must already know about it." He looked at me, his eyes devoid of any emotion. "This is a transaction." "I'm well aware. You helped me out of my predicament, and I give you the honor of being a princess consort, allowing you to get rid of Guyen in a legitimate way. But..." He paused, his gaze falling on his own senseless legs. "Have you ever thought about what kind of life you'll lead for the rest of your days, married to a cripple like me? You are in the prime of your life, while I am just a living dead man barely hanging on. Miss Shen, are you really not going to regret this?" His tone was so calm it was almost cruel, as if he were talking about someone else's business, and as if he were delivering a final interrogation to me, and also to himself. I looked into his eyes, and beneath that pool of stagnant water, I seemed to see a trace of indignation and struggle. I smiled slightly, crouched down, and met his gaze at eye level. "Your Highness, you're wrong. First, my marrying you was not a transaction. It is because I respect you and trust you. I believe that Xiao Che, the Prince of Zhenbei, will never be confined to a wheelchair for his entire life. Second, I'm not doing this to get rid of Guyan. If I wanted to get rid of him, I have plenty of ways. I don't need to stake my whole life on it. I chose to marry you because I believe that you are worth it. Third, I looked into his eyes and said, word by word, with utmost seriousness, Your Highness, you are not a cripple. In my eyes, you are still that great hero who protected the home and defended the country, an indomitable figure. Your legs, they're just tired for now and need to rest. I will be with you and wait for them to get better. My words were like a pebble tossed into the stagnant lake of his heart. His pupils shrank almost imperceptibly. He stared fixedly at me for a long time, and in those dull eyes, there was finally a faint glimmer of light. Wait for it to get better? He laughed self-deprecatingly. The imperial physicians all said that my legs, with all the sinews and meridians severed, are beyond the help of even the gods. They are them, and I am me. I stood up, my tone filled with absolute confidence. Your Highness, are you willing to trust me this once? He didn't answer immediately, just looked at me in silence. After a long while, he finally spoke slowly. His voice was still hoarse, but it carried a warmth I'd never heard before. All right, I trust you. Our wedding date was set very quickly. His Majesty seems to also want to hasten this marriage, only giving us 10 days to prepare. The entire Shen family immediately got busy. Mother took me with her to prepare my dowry all over again. She said that the last time I married Guyan, everything was kept simple to avoid revealing my identity, which was unfair to me. This time, it must be grand and splendid, making me the most beautiful bride in the entire capital. Father, on the other hand, was paving the way for me in the imperial court. He spoke with several old ministers, asking them to give their full support on the matter of the 7th prince's restoration. My elder brother, Shen Shu, was even busier, so much so that his feet never touched the ground. He utilized all of the Shen family's trade routes and connections, gathering all sorts of rare treasures from all over the country for me as my dowry. The entire Shen family was immersed in a joyous and festive atmosphere. Meanwhile, the Marquis Pingyuan's residence was shrouded in gloom. Guyan was severely beaten that day, and lay in bed for another 7 or 8 days before he could barely get on his feet. During this time, he sent people to the Shen residence several times, with calling cards, wanting to see me. But they were all mercilessly sent away by Shen Shu. He didn't give up and had Lin Qingqing come instead. Lin Qingqing, however, learned her lesson. She didn't dare to put on an act in front of me again, merely kneeling outside the Shen residence gate, wailing with snot and tears, saying the marquis knew he was wrong, begging me to forgive him and to go back. I couldn't even be bothered to show my face and just had the servants throw a basin of cold water on her. After several attempts, Gu Yan finally faced reality. I won't look back anymore. He was in complete despair. He started to let himself go, drinking all day, ignoring the affairs of his manor, and not attending the imperial court. The censors in the court, who had long found him displeasing, submitted memorials one after another, impeaching him for being absent from court without reason and for his lack of virtue. His Majesty was furious, and issued an edict stripping him of half a year's salary, ordering him to reflect on his wrongdoings behind closed doors. Gu Yan's political career was in jeopardy, and all of this was just the beginning. 10 days later, the day of the grand wedding arrived. Wearing the phoenix coronet and wedding cape that my mother had hand-sewn for me, I got into the bridal sedan chair heading to the 7th Prince's manor amidst the crowd's blessings. The wedding procession stretched from the Shen family's entrance all the way to the end of the long street. The 10-Lai dowry procession was grand and mighty, countless times more magnificent than when I married Gu Yan back then. The common people of the capital all swarmed the streets, scrambling to get a glimpse of this magnificent wedding. Halfway through the journey, suddenly, a figure with disheveled hair, reeking of alcohol, crazily broke through the guards of the wedding procession and threw himself in front of my bridal sedan chair. It was Gu Yan. Wanye? Wanye, you can't marry him. He clung desperately to the sedan door, looking like a madman. You are my, Gu Yan's wife. Have you forgotten our 7 years of affection? Have you forgotten what you said to me back then? You said you would stay with me for a lifetime. You can't go back on your word. Wanye, you come down. Come home with me. I don't want anything anymore. I just want you. I just want you. He was crying so hard his snot and tears were streaming down, looking utterly wretched. The common folk around were all pointing at him, their faces full of disdain. My elder brother Shen Shu, who was escorting me, was so angry his face turned livid. He drew his sword and wanted to cut him down with one strike. Gu Yan, you lunatic! Get the hell away from me! Just then, the commander of the prince's mansion guards, who had been following by the bridal sedan, spurred his horse forward and kicked Gu Yan to the ground. I recognized that guard commander. He was Xiao Che's most loyal subordinate, named Qin Feng. Qin Feng looked down at Gu Yan on the ground, his gaze as cold as a dagger. You audacious maniac! How dare you charge at the Wang Fei's wedding sedan? Men, seize him for me! Several of the manor's guards swarmed forward, pinning Gu Yan down firmly. Gu Yan was still struggling desperately, endlessly shouting my name. I sat in the sedan chair, remaining silent the whole time, not even lifting the curtain. I just felt that it was all incredibly ironic. If you knew it would come to this, why did you even start? Gu Yan, this deeply affectionate look of yours now, who are you putting it on for? The wedding sedan stopped in front of the prince's mansion gate. Supported by the wedding matron, I stepped over the brazier and walked into this place that was about to become my new home. The 7th prince's mansion was very large, but because its master had been ill for a long time, it seemed a bit deserted. There weren't many servants in the residence, but every one of them was sharp and capable, with the grim, killing aura of soldiers in their eyes. I suppose they were all the personal guards who retreated from the battlefield with Xiao Che back then. I was sent directly into the bridal chamber. The room was decorated festively, with tall red candles burning brightly, illuminating the entire chamber. I sat alone by the edge of the bed, waiting quietly. After an unknown amount of time, the door was pushed open, and the sound of a rolling wheelchair was heard. Xiao Qi came in. He had already changed out of his court attire and was wearing a bright red wedding robe. It made his pale face seem to have a bit more color, and also made him more strikingly handsome. He waved his hand to dismiss all the servants, then wheeled himself over to me. We faced each other without a word, separated by the veil. After a long while, he slowly reached out and gently lifted my red veil with a jade ruyi scepter. As the veil fell, my face was clearly reflected in his eyes. His hand paused slightly. A flash of amazement crossed his lifeless eyes, but they quickly returned to their usual calmness. "You are very beautiful today." He praised me sincerely. I smiled. "Your Highness is also very handsome today." He picked up the nuptial wine from the table and handed me a cup. "Today's events must have frightened you." He was referring to Guyen trying to snatch the bride. I took the wine cup and shook my head. "It is nothing. Just an annoying fly. All you have to do is swat it away." He looked at me, a trace of inquiry in his eyes. "I'm very curious," he asked. "Why did you fall for him back then?" This was a very pointed question, but I knew he meant no harm. It was just simple curiosity. I thought for a moment, then answered frankly, "Perhaps. It is because I was young and naive. Back then, I thought he was talented, ambitious, a man who could stand tall and proud. I thought that as long as I treated him with all my heart, he would do the same for me. Unfortunately, I was wrong." I gave a self-deprecating laugh. I overestimated human nature and underestimated the temptation of power and influence. What he loved was never me, but the things I could bring him. Xiaoqi fell silent. He picked up his wine cup and gently clinked it with mine. "It is all in the past," he said softly. "From now on, I'm here." His voice was very soft, yet it carried a reassuring strength. I looked at him, a warmth spreading in my heart. We drank it all in one go. The strong liquor slid down my throat, with a trace of sweetness. Putting down his cup, he looked at me and suddenly said, "Can you help me up?" I froze for a moment, then immediately understood. Tonight is our wedding night. Although he had trouble with his legs, some formalities still couldn't be skipped. I nodded, walked over to his side, reached out, and held his arm. His body was very heavy, and almost all of his weight was pressing down on me. Using all my strength, I barely managed to help him up from the wheelchair, letting him lean on me. He was more than a head taller than me, and I could smell the faint scent of medicinal herbs on him, and his unique, crisp and cool scent. My face, without me realizing it, turned red, sorry. He also seemed to have noticed my embarrassment, his voice a bit unnatural. "I'm sorry to put you through this. It is no trouble at all." I shook my head, supporting him as we walked towards the bed, one difficult step at a time. It was just a few short steps, but it felt exceptionally long for us. Finally, I settled him onto the bed. I was panting from exhaustion, my forehead covered in fine sweat. Lying on the bed, he looked at me with a complicated expression in his eyes. "Shenwanye," he suddenly called my name. Thank you." "You're welcome," I smiled. "We're husband and wife, aren't we?" He looked at my smile, slightly lost in thought. After a long while, he finally looked away and said softly, "It is late. You should rest." I knew what he meant. He didn't want, and wasn't willing, to let a healthy woman like me serve a cripple like him. He had his pride. I didn't insist either, just nodded and lay down on the soft couch in the outer room. The night passed without a word. But I knew that between him and me, something had already started to change. The days after our marriage were calmer than I had imagined, and also more harmonious. I officially took over the household management of the princely manor. The servants in the manor, although they were all Xiaoche's old subordinates, were very respectful towards me, the new princess consort. Qin Feng, especially, was completely obedient to me. If I said one, he would never say two. I knew this was Xiaoche's intention. He was using his own way to tell me that from now on, I was in charge of this household. And I didn't let down his trust. I managed the entire princely manor, putting everything in good order. Using my business experience, I revitalized several properties under the manor's name, causing the household's income to multiply several times over. I also improved the servants' food and benefits, and the atmosphere throughout the manor became much livelier than when I first arrived. Xiaoche saw all of this, but he didn't say a word. He spent most of his time in the study, reading, writing, or staring at a game board. He would sit there for the entire day. He rarely spoke and rarely smiled, like a lonely island immersed in his own world. But I knew he wasn't truly cut off from the world. Every day, Qin Feng would report to him on all matters, big and small, in the imperial court, as well as the movements of the various factions. Although he was in a wheelchair, his heart was still set on the world. I didn't disturb him. It is just that every day, I would personally go to the kitchen to prepare his 3 meals. His health was very poor, his digestion was weak, and there were many things he couldn't eat. So I read through numerous medical books and studied medicinal cuisine. The medicinal meals I made were light in flavor, yet very tasty, and were greatly beneficial for his health. At first, he would only take a few bites out of politeness. Later, he gradually got used to my cooking. Every time, he would eat the whole bowl of medicinal food until it was clean. Our conversations, too, changed from the initial formal respect to something with a bit more everyday warmth. He would ask me what delicious food I had made that day. I would tell him what interesting things I saw on the streets that day. Between us, there was no passionate love, but a kind of gentle, steady warmth was slowly growing. And I, too, began my plan. Using the excuse of conditioning his body, I invited all the famous imperial physicians in the capital to hold a consultation for Xiaoche. Of course, the result was just as I had expected. After examining Xiaoche's legs, all the imperial physicians shook their heads one by one, saying they were powerless to help. His Highness's legs were too severely injured back then. The muscles and meridians are all damaged, and cold qi has seeped into his bones, causing them to become necrotic long ago. It is already a great blessing that his life was saved. I sent those imperial physicians away, but I felt more and more confident in my heart. Because I had discovered a secret. Xiaoche's legs were not truly necrotic. Although most of the meridians in his legs had atrophied, a few key acupoints still had a faint reaction when I touched them. This meant that his legs could still be saved. It is just that the medical skills of those imperial physicians had not yet reached that level. But I could. My maternal grandmother was the most famous divine female physician of the previous dynasty. Her mastery of the golden needle acupuncture technique was so superb it was said she could bring the dead back to life and grow flesh on bare bones. Having grown up by my grandmother's side, I learned through constant exposure and inherited 70 to 80% of her true skills. It is just that. My maternal grandmother once warned me that medical skills are an art to save people, but also a weapon to kill, and shouldn't be shown to others lightly, lest it invite disaster. So, for all these years besides my parents and older brother, no one knew I understood medicine. But now, for Xiaoche, I've decided to make an exception. Just this once. I need to prepare a lot of things. Rare medicinal herbs, specially made golden needles, and also, I need a completely safe environment where I won't be disturbed. I secretly entrusted all of these things to my older brother Shen Shu to handle. I believe he'll be able to get everything ready for me very soon. And while I was running around everywhere for Xiaoche's leg, Guyan wasn't idle either. It seems he has recovered from the shock of that grand wedding. He stopped drinking heavily, and he no longer wallowed in self-pity. He started attending the imperial court again, and began to manage his network of connections once more. He seemed to want to prove that even without me, without the Shen family, he could still make a comeback on his own. He also did something that made everyone's jaws drop. He divorced Lin Qingqing on the grounds of jealousy, lack of virtue, and disturbing the peace of the household. With a single letter of divorce, he kicked the woman he once said he would owe for a lifetime out of the marquis's mansion. Lin Qingqing went to him in tears, but he had his men beat her and drive her out with clubs. It is said that Lin Qingqing was left penniless and homeless on the streets, and was eventually spotted by a passing rich merchant who took her in as his 18th concubine. This move by Guyan left everyone in the capital baffled. Some said he was heartless and ungrateful, divorcing even his own childhood sweetheart, just like that. Some people also said that this was him having a sudden awakening, wanting to make a clean break with the past and start over. Even some people guessed that he did this for me. It was to show me that he had already cleaned house, hoping I would have a change of heart. Hearing these rumors, I just found it laughable. Guyan, did you think that by getting rid of a Lin Ching Ching, you could erase all your betrayal and the hurt you caused? You're too naive. A broken mirror, hard to mend. Spilled water, hard to retrieve. Between us, there has long been no possibility. In the blink of an eye, it was winter. The first snow fell in the capital city. The medicinal herbs and gold needles I had prepared for Xiaoqie were also all ready. It was time to begin. I chose a night with raging wind and snow. This kind of weather is best for covering one's tracks. I had Qin Feng guard the courtyard gate, and no one was allowed to approach. Then, I brought Xiaoqie to a heated chamber in the deepest part of the prince's mansion. Here, there was a huge bathtub, connected to an earth fire below, which could be heated at any time. I had the servants fill the bathtub with scalding hot medicinal soup. That medicinal soup, I spent 7 days and 7 nights brewing it with dozens of rare medicinal herbs. Its color was as black as ink, giving off a strong, pungent odor. Xiaoqie sat in his wheelchair, his brows furrowing slightly as he looked at that tub of medicinal soup. "What is this for?" "A medicinal bath," I answered concisely. "Your Highness, the upcoming treatment will be extremely painful. You might feel that living is worse than death, but you must hold on. If you give up halfway, all our previous efforts will be for nothing." My tone was more serious than ever before. Xiaoqie looked at me, a trace of complex emotion flickering in his calm eyes. There was doubt, curiosity, and also a trace of anticipation that even he himself hadn't noticed. He was silent for a moment, and finally nodded. "Okay, I trust you." I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and began to undo his clothes. When his bare upper body was exposed to the air, I still couldn't help but gasp. His body was covered with scars, big and small. There were blade wounds and arrow wounds, crisscrossing like hideous centipedes coiled over his once sturdy chest and back. One could imagine what brutal battles he must have experienced on the battlefield back then. My heart felt as if something had viciously clenched it. Suppressing the ache in my heart, I supported him and slowly moved him into the bathtub. Ah! The moment the scalding medicinal bath touched his skin, he couldn't help but let out a pained groan. His body tensed up instantly, and veins bulged on his forehead. "Endure it," I held down his shoulders and said in a deep voice. "This is just the beginning." With that, I took out a brocade-wrapped needle pouch from my bosom. Opening the needle pouch, inside were 9 golden needles of varying lengths, as fine as an ox's hair. Under the candlelight, they flickered with a chilling, cold glint. "Is this the golden needle acupoint crossing technique?" Xiaoqie's voice trembled slightly from the pain. He recognized this set of needle techniques. Back then, his imperial grandmother had also wanted to use this set of techniques to treat his leg. Unfortunately, before she could even apply the needles, the imperial grandmother passed away from illness. He never expected that this long-lost ultimate technique would actually appear in my hands. "Your Highness has a sharp eye." I picked up the longest golden needle, aimed it at an acupoint on his leg. "I'm starting now. You'll have to bear with it." Before the words even left my mouth, with a flick of my wrist, the golden needle steadily pierced into his acupoint. Nay. Xiaoqie's body suddenly trembled, an indescribable, excruciating pain, accompanied by a searing flow of qi, instantly spread throughout his body along his meridians. That feeling was like countless ants gnawing at his bone marrow. He bit down hard, so hard that his lips started to bleed. Beads of sweat the size of beans rolled down from his forehead. I didn't stop. The second needle, the third needle, the fourth needle, the 9 golden needles were inserted by me, one by one, into the 9 major acupoints on his leg. With every needle inserted, his pain doubled. In the end, all the muscles in his body were twitching and trembling uncontrollably. His vision started to blur. His consciousness, too, was gradually fading away. Just when he could no longer hold on and was about to pass out, he felt a warm, soft hand grasp his cold hand. "Shao-Chi, hang in there." It was my voice. "Think of the soldiers who died in vain in the northern borders. Think of the brothers still waiting for you to return. Think about yourself. Are you content to live out the rest of your broken life in a wheelchair like this? You are not a cripple. You are the Prince of Genbei, the god of war of the Great Zhou." My voice, like a clap of thunder, exploded in his chaotic mind. All that he had deliberately forgotten, the indignation, anger, and humiliation instantly surged to his mind. No, he wouldn't accept it. He snapped his eyes open, and in those vacant pupils, 2 flames were rekindled. Using all his strength, he held my hand in a death grip. "I will not give up." He squeezed out those few words from between his teeth, one word at a time. I looked at him and smiled. I knew that he had already made it through the most difficult ordeal, for a whole night. Shao-Che soaked in that tub of medicinal soup for a whole night. I also stayed by his side, watching over him for a whole night. During that time, I performed acupuncture on him 2 more times, and each time, it was a hell-like torture. But he gritted his teeth and pulled through it all. When the first ray of morning light came through the window, I finally pulled out the last golden needle from his leg. "It is done." I let out a long sigh of relief, feeling as if I was about to collapse myself. Shao-Che leaned against the side of the bathtub, panting heavily, his face as pale as paper, as if he had just been pulled out of the water, but his eyes were astonishingly bright. I think I... He looked at me, his voice trembling with a hint of disbelief. "I think I can feel my legs." Although, it was just a faint tingling itch, like being pricked by needles. But for someone whose legs had been completely numb for 2 years, this was undoubtedly a huge surprise. I smiled and nodded. "This is just the first step. Next, we have to undergo 3 months of rehabilitation therapy. Every day there will be medicinal baths, acupuncture, and..." I looked at him and winked slyly. "And also, you have to learn to walk again." Shao-Che's body suddenly jolted. He stared at me fixedly, a tempestuous storm raging in his deep eyes. After a long while, he slowly reached out and took my hand. His hand was still ice cold, but it carried an undeniable strength. "Wan Yi." He called my name. His voice hoarse, yet filled with an unprecedented solemnity. "Great kindness needs no thanks. From now on, my life, Shao-Che, is life, is yours." I squeezed his hand back and said with a smile, "I don't want your life. I just want you to stand up properly." The next 3 months, for Shao-Che, were hell and also rebirth. Every day he had to endure pain that was unimaginable for an ordinary person. The searing pain of the medicinal baths, the piercing pain of the needles, and during physical therapy, a pain like his muscles were tearing. Several times he was in so much pain that he nearly fainted. But he never once said the word no. He persevered with astonishing willpower, and I, in turn, became his only reliance and support. I accompanied him every day, supporting him step by step as he relearned how to walk. From the beginning, he needed my help just to barely stand. Later on, he could lean on a crutch and walk a few steps by himself, and then finally he could at last throw away the crutch. And although he still stumbled a bit, he could already walk independently. That day, when he threw away the crutch and walked from the study doorway, step by step, to me on his own, I cried. I threw myself into his arms, crying like a child. He also held me tightly, and this iron-willed man, who hadn't shed a single tear throughout the hellish torture, his eyes also reddened. "Wan Yi." He lowered his head, and with his somewhat rough lips, gently kissed away the tears on my face. I stood up. I nodded, choking back sobs. "Thank you. You're welcome." We held each other under the warm winter sun, smiling through tears. I know, from this moment on, that once commanding Genbei Wang has returned, and I have also finally found my true home. We didn't announce the news that Xiao Che could walk. I had him continue to sit in his wheelchair, pretending to be the same as before, staying behind closed doors, because the time isn't right yet. What we're waiting for is a chance that can take everyone by surprise and catch our enemies off guard. And this opportunity came very soon. The year's end is approaching. His Majesty issued a decree inviting all the royalty and nobility in the capital, and all the civil and military officials to attend together with their families. Xiao Che and I, of course, were also among those invited. I know. This is the best opportunity for us to announce to the world the return of the King of Zhenbei. It is also time for me to make a clean break with Gu Yan. These past 3 months, Gu Yan's life has been very tough. Although he cast aside Lin Qingqing, he also tried hard to reverse his decline. But the way the wind was blowing in the imperial court had already changed. Without the support of the Shen family and the 7th prince's mansion, he was like a ship that had lost its rudder, unable to make any headway in the stormy waves of officialdom. The political enemies he had offended before started to band together and trip him up at every turn. The few important tasks he had on hand were all sabotaged for various reasons. His Majesty also became increasingly disappointed and cold towards him. His position as marquis, although he still had it, but any discerning person could tell that he had already lost power. He became more and more sullen and irritable. I heard that on several occasions, he got drunk, ran to the gate of the 7th prince's manor shouting and screaming that he wanted to see me. In the end, he was always beaten half to death by Qin Feng and his men, and thrown out. I never saw him, not once, because he was no longer worthy of appearing before me. On the day of the annual banquet, Xiao Che and I attended in full regalia. I still helped him into his wheelchair. At the entrance of the manor, he glanced back at me, a hint of a smile in his eyes. "Are you ready, my princess consort?" I smiled back. "Ready when you are, my prince." When we appeared in the grand hall of the imperial palace for the banquet, we immediately drew everyone's attention. This was the first time Xiao Che and I had made a public appearance at such an important occasion since our marriage. Everyone's gaze was filled with curiosity and scrutiny. There was sympathy, pity, and also schadenfreude. I could feel a venomous and complex gaze, from a corner, staring fixedly at me. I didn't need to look to know it was Gu Yan. I paid him no mind, simply pushing Xiao Che's wheelchair, and calmly walked to our seats. The banquet began, filled with song, dance, and a peaceful atmosphere. But everyone knew full well that beneath this calm surface, an undercurrent was surging. After several rounds of drinks and courses, Gu Yan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly stood up. Holding his wine cup, he staggered to the center of the grand hall. "Your Majesty!" With a thud, he fell to his knees on the ground, his voice mournful. "I, your subject, Marquis Ping Yuan, Gu Yan, am guilty." Everyone was stunned, and the music also came to an abrupt halt. In the grand hall, it instantly became deathly silent. Everyone's gazes were all focused on Gu Yan. The emperor frowned and asked in a deep voice, "Beloved subject Gu, of what crime are you guilty?" Gu Yan raised his head, his face full of tear streaks, but his gaze shot straight at me. "I, your subject, have failed my first wife, and I have failed the 7th princess consort," he shouted hoarsely. "I, your subject, was possessed back then, mistakenly trusted a villain, hurt Wan Yi, and also betrayed His Highness's life-saving grace. I, your subject, deserve to die 10,000 deaths. Wan Yi, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong." He suddenly turned to me, on the ground, and crawled over to me. "Will you forgive me, please? Give me another chance. I'm willing to give up everything. My title, my official post, I don't want any of it. I just want you to come back." This sudden heartfelt confession of his stunned everyone. What kind of move is this? Asking his ex-wife to get back together at His Majesty's New Year banquet, and in front of her current husband. Everyone's gazes, all at once, turned to Xiao Che and me. They wanted to see how we would handle this farce. I sat in my seat, expressionless, not even bothering to lift my eyelids, but the corner of the mouth of Xiao Che, who was beside me, curved into a cold arc. He knew that the moment he had long awaited had finally arrived. Marquis, those words were truly sincere and deeply moving. A clear, cold voice slowly rang out in the grand hall. It was Xiaoche. He was still sitting in his wheelchair. His tone was flat, revealing no joy or anger. Guyan stopped crawling, raised his head, and looked at Xiaoche. His eyes filled with provocation. He knew Xiaoche was a cripple. He was certain that on an occasion like this, Xiaoche wouldn't dare do anything to him. He just wanted to use this method to disgust me, to disgust Xiaoche. He wanted everyone to see that I, Shen Wanyi, am the woman that he, Gu Yan, doesn't want. Even after marrying a prince, she was still at the beck and call of him, her ex-husband. His calculations, they're very well done. Unfortunately, he miscalculated one thing. And that is, the current Xiaoche is no longer that one from before. The crippled prince who could be bullied by anyone. However, Xiaoche's tone suddenly shifted, his gaze abruptly becoming sharp. My princess consort doesn't seem to have given you a second chance. As he spoke, both hands gently pressed onto the armrests of the wheelchair. Then, in everyone's shocked, stunned, disbelieving gazes, he slowly stood up, standing perfectly straight, like a long spear piercing the blue sky. Boom! The entire great hall instantly erupted. Oh my God, the seventh prince! He stood up. His legs are healed. What is going on? Everyone was stunned and dumbfounded. Even the emperor on the dragon throne shot to his feet, a look of shock and ecstasy on his face. Seventh brother, your legs! And the most shocked of all was none other than Gu Yan, who was kneeling on the ground. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes wide, pointing at Xiaoche, his lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. Xiaoche paid no mind to anyone's gasps of surprise. He just, step by step, steadily, walked up to me. Then, he reached out his hand, gently pulled me up from my seat, and drew me into his embrace. He lowered his head and looked at me, his eyes filled with an unmelting tenderness and adoration. I've let you suffer. I shook my head, leaning against his solid chest, my heart filled with an unprecedented peace and joy. Only then did he turn around, looking down from above at the man on the ground, whose face was already ashen. Gu Yan. His voice was as cold as the Siberian wind. You just said you were willing to give up everything. Very well. This prince will grant you your wish. He turned to the emperor and said in a clear voice, Your Majesty, I Xiaoche, Prince of Zhenbei, implore your Majesty to thoroughly investigate the truth of the northern border battle from 2 years ago. I suspect that Marquis Pingyuan Gu Yan fled from the battle that year, fearing the enemy and refusing to advance, which led to our army being heavily surrounded. I too was seriously injured while covering his retreat. I have evidence. I implore your Majesty to seek justice for the 30,000 soldiers of the Zhenbei army who died unjustly. Just as he finished speaking, Qin Feng walked in from outside the hall, holding a thick stack of files, and presented them to the emperor. The color instantly drained from Gu Yan's face. He collapsed to the ground, like a pile of soft mud. He knew he was finished, completely finished. That New Year's banquet came to a close in a way no one had expected. Gu Yan was seized on the spot and thrown into the imperial prison. The emperor reviewed the evidence presented by Xiaoche overnight, and was filled with imperial rage. It turned out that the battle at the northern border 2 years ago was not at all as Gu Yan had reported. It was he who, greedy for merit, recklessly advanced and fell into the enemy's ambush. At the critical moment, he was as timid as a mouse, abandoning the army and being the first to flee. It was Xiaoche who, in order to stabilize the army's morale and save more of his comrades, used himself as bait to lure away the enemy's main force, ultimately suffering grievous injuries. After the battle, to cover up his crimes, Gu Yan altered the battle report and took all the credit for himself. He also used the life-saving graces Xiaoche owed him to make Xiaoche vouch for him, and thus managed to fool everyone. When the truth came out, the entire court was shocked. The emperor issued an edict, stripping Guyan of his title as marquis.P, confiscating all his family assets, and, for the crime of treason, sentenced him to beheading after autumn. A marquis who was once so glorious, just like that, became a prisoner, his reputation ruined and his life in tatters. As for the seventh prince, Xiaoche, his name was cleared, his legs were fully healed, and he returned to the center of power. The emperor towards him felt both guilty and heavily reliant. Not only did he restore his title as the Prince of Zhenbei and all his military authority, he also appointed him as the Prince Regent to assist in court affairs. For a time, the seventh prince's mansion was bustling with visitors, its glory unparalleled. And I, as the princess consort who had cured the prince's legs and exposed Guyan's conspiracy, also became the most respected and envied woman in the capital. Everyone said that I had a keen eye for talent, not only marrying well but also bringing my husband good fortune. I just smiled, non-committally. I knew I didn't bring him good fortune. I just chose a man who was worthy of me giving my all. Half a year later, amidst the bleak autumn wind, I received news of Guyan's death. I heard that in the celestial prison, his hair turned white overnight, and before his death, he was still ceaselessly calling my name. I just tossed the letter announcing his death into the brazier, along with my 7 years of foolish youth, together burned to ashes. 2 more years passed, and my first child with Xiaoche was born. He was a boy, looked a lot like him, with sharp eyes and brows, didn't cry much, and always liked to keep his big, dark, sparkling eyes open, curiously looking at the world. Xiaoche held him, unable to put him down, as happy as a child. He named him Xiao Nianwan. He said, it was to commemorate our meeting. I leaned in his arms, looking out the window. The years were quiet and good, and life was peaceful and stable. I knew in this life I had nothing more to ask for. As for that man named Guyan, and that sordid past with him, had long been forgotten by me in a corner of my memory. Not worth mentioning.